Pool C at the 2019 Rugby World Cup. This was supposed to be the pool of death, with England, France, and Argentina all crammed into that one pool, alongside Tonga and USA, who aren't like typical minnow teams. So you'd have to say this was probably maybe this in Pool D, I guess, the toughest of the pools. I think overall, in terms of the team quality, you'd probably have to give it to this pool. But in the end, England and France actually got through relatively comfortably. The performance levels weren't always there for the French, but they managed to get out of the pool. We'll see how they go in the quarterfinal. I'll go through some of the key results for this pool and kind of give the teams a grade on how they went. And as always, you guys can let me know your thoughts at the end. We'll work our way up from the bottom. So we'll start with the US. They were the last team to get underway at the Rugby World Cup, so when everyone else was playing, they were sitting it out. Their opening game was against England. They lost 45 points to 7. England were on a short turnaround for that game, so it's when you hope maybe the US would get a little bit closer, but England were in pretty good form, scoring a fair few tries. So 45-7. It's not disgraceful, but it's not one that they'll look back with much fondness on. They were pretty well dominated from what I remember about that game. It's a wee while ago now, 26th of September. Their second game was against France, and that one was 33 points to 9. Another loss. Again, it's a little bit better. It's a respectable scoreline, but again, it's not one that you'll look back and really remember it as one where they challenged, where they were in front for any kind of extended period of time. It's just kind of a medium style loss. The next one against Argentina. Argentina were already out at that point. They made some swaps of the players and really cut loose, and the Americans were on the brunt of that, 47 points to 17. So that was probably a pretty poor result for the US. And then finally, the game which mattered, their kind of World Cup final within the pool, which was against Tonga. They lost 31 points to 19. They did have some good moments in that game, but overall Tonga were deserved winners. Tonga blew a fair few chances. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about the US about this. There's not that one game where they really impressed. At best, you could say is they didn't do terribly, which is not that encouraging. I think all of us would like to hope they would do better. I am keen to see how they go in 4 years' time, after they've had the Major League Rugby set up for another 4 years, more guys playing professional rugby week in, week out, and then see what kind of trickle-down effect that has, or trickle-up, if that's a thing, through to the national team. So here's hoping. Yeah, I can't really give the US a pass on that one. No points. Sorry, but that's kind of the way it is. But I am optimistic. I certainly wouldn't write them off. The next team was Tonga. And Tonga, if you remember, and it doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on the World Cup, but they got beaten by, the All Blacks put 90 plus points on them prior to the World Cup. The All Blacks probably could have scored 100, but they didn't. So Tonga was going in off the back of a pretty devastating loss, with an opening game against England and a second game against Argentina. So not looked like it was getting a lot better. But the first game they lost 35-3 against England. Wasn't a disgrace again. It's a similar scoreline, 45-7 the US, 35-3 with Tonga. They looked a lot more structured, a lot more settled, and as you'll see through the results, I feel like Tonga actually got a lot better throughout the tournament. So 35-3 against England, it's a loss. It's better than their preseason result by a country mile, but still, again, it's one that's a bit forgettable. Then 28-12 against Argentina. Argentina had kind of a flurry of scores in that one. But the scoreline remained respectable. Third game, they almost beat France. It's 23 points to 21. They almost did Argentina a massive favour, but couldn't quite get that one done. And then the final game, it kind of clicks. Not even fully. As I said, they missed a lot of chances. They could have scored even more, but they finished 31-19 winners. So I'm really feeling pretty good about the way the tournament went for Tonga. Tota Kefu talked, he's the coach, about how they need more games, and they kind of got better as time went on. And I buy it. I think they were on the improve, so nice for them to sign up for a win. I'll give them a pass. I kind of wish if their pre-World Cup schedule had maybe been able to be managed a bit better, maybe they would have been peaking at the World Cup rather than in the last couple of games, but it was always going to be a tough pool for them anyway. The next one, Argentina, they lose the opener to France, 21 points to 23. They have a chance to win it, but can't do it. They did go in front after trailing for a long period, but then they let France back in front from it through a drop goal. So that was the game that in all likelihood was going to decide who goes through and who doesn't, and they lost it just. Then they beat Tonga, like I said, 28-12. Solid without being totally convincing, and then lost 39 points to 10 to England. The story of that one is going to be the Lavanini red card. Argentina did come out hot for a bit, but yeah, they weren't able to compete with England. It was always going to be an uphill battle for them, but the red card was pretty damning, and then they finally shifted things up, cut loose for that final game with no pressure on against the US, and racked up almost 50 points with 47-17, but you can't give Argentina a pass on this one. They were expected to do a lot better. They didn't deliver the goods, and they are out at the pool stages. Nice jersey, but not good results overall. So it's disappointing, especially because their Super Rugby team, which is largely the team which supplies players for this Argentinian national team, did really well in Super Rugby. I mean, the Crusaders are made up of a lot of All Blacks. The Jaguares are made up of a lot of Pumas players, so the flow on didn't seem to be there, which is disappointing. France finishing second, they go through the place to play Wales, who finished top of Pool D. Well, I mean, they didn't lose any games, so it looks good on paper. They finished second. They have their final game with England washed out with the typhoon, so cancelled due to safety reasons, so we don't know who would have finished top between them. In all likelihood, England. They're going to go into as big favourites, but we never got to see that game, so we'll never know. But they got the clutch victory over Argentina. Lopez with the drop goal. Not, again, they didn't blow them away. It was tight. It was always going to be tight. They got the job done. Over the US, 33-9. Again, solid without being kind of startling. And then 23-21 over Tonga. A bit lucky, but they still did enough to get the win. So the performance levels don't quite seem to be there for France. You still feel like they could click, but they're only going to get one more chance to do it. If they don't click against Wales, it's going to be a trip back home. So not convinced. You got to give them a pass for getting out of this pool, but it's a scraped through. Like in New Zealand, that'd be like a 51%, where 50 is the pass mark or something like that. So still a pass. More than you can say for some other teams who didn't end up making it. And England had a tough start, and then they had Tonga early, beat them okay. Like I said, 35-3. It wasn't the 90 that New Zealand put on them prior to the World Cup, but a World Cup game was always going to be more intense. And then a short turnaround with the USA, pretty solid win, and then the win over Argentina. Argentina had the card, but England did the job. So England really looked the business throughout the tournament. It's a pity we didn't get to see the France game to see kind of just what level they would have been hitting, because England, with the way they were rotating the squad, did seem to be kind of ramping up nicely. So they look like a solid contender from this pool. Without seeing that last game, it's a slight lack of information, but they do go through top. They will play the Wallabies, which will be an interesting one, especially with Eddie Jones being Australian, so there's going to be a bit of tension between him and Cheika, a bit of mind games in the lead-up. There's already been a little bit of that. Eddie talking about the rest that they'll now get, having not had to play France, and how it's possibly a benefit. And then the journalist asking that to Cheika, and Cheika kind of firing back about saying, well, now all the pressure's on England, they have to win. So it's already started. We'll see how they go. I think you got to give England a pass based on the 3 games that we saw. Like I said, I think they were kind of ramping up on the right direction. You can kind of see that progress, unlike what we saw with France maybe. But yeah, that was Pool C, the pool of death. It didn't end up quite having the same drama as maybe Pool A. It didn't go down to the wire. The last game to decide the winner of the pool was cancelled, so it kind of ended on a bit of an anticlimax. But yeah, I guess we'll see how these go. England are going to go into this game against Australia as the favourites, but France will go into their one as the underdog. So kind of a split pool, unlike A versus B, where it's B that's the favourite. This one seems to be a little bit of a split. So, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on the pool. How did you think it went? How do you see these teams going forward? How did you rate their performances throughout the games that were played? And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later. 10% off England Rugby gear from the England Rugby store. Use the code 2cents10 at the checkout. Remember, England Rugby store also has free UK delivery on orders over £60. Classic jerseys still in stock. Alternate classic jersey. Only small and medium left for those ones. Seems like that one's been a bit of a kind of a love it or hate it jersey, but just based on the stock, I would say more people liking it than not. I know I personally like the red one, but there seem to be a few people who are not keen. The pro jersey, so the fancy one, still a few sizes left for the original white. More left for the pro jersey, so I guess one, maybe 6 or 1/2 a dozen of the other. And also, if you are keen on any training gear, England Rugby Store has some exclusives there as well. But yeah, guys, remember it's 2cents10 is the code to get 10% off at the checkout. Cheers.